Yeah, I've got great pleasure in introducing you to Ged Equi. Jed, he prefers the name Jed, by the way. Yeah, Jed and I go back, known each other well over 30 years, which is quite frightening. But Jed graduated quite a few years ago, without going into great detail, um, in graphics and graphic design, and ended up going to at the time, a small agency called Interbrand, which ended up being certainly one of the biggest design agencies on the planet. If I'm not mistaken, Jed, you were the first creative employee full time back in the day,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and ended up building an empire, a global empire, over the course of well over 10 years, maybe more like 15. Jed, since became independent, and we managed to ask Jed to get involved in ArtShred over the last 5 or 6 years, and is now a director of ArtShred as well as an independent designer. So I would just like to introduce you, Jed, and it's over to you, mate.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to see everyone, both online and virtually. Can you just stay on the first slide just for a second? So my background is creative. Studied graphic design, as Alex said. And today's presentation is really about, it's not about whether AI is good or bad. It's about how we all as creative people can use it well without losing our originality. So my presentation here is about practical things we can do, what can help us, what could actually harm us, what can we do right now. And it's really remembering one thing, which is AI can definitely speed up our process, but it cannot replace our taste, our judgment, our point of view. And I would just think of AI as another tool. When I first started, if you just click to the next one, please. And when I first started, my tool was
Could
a
you click, please?
click, please. My tool was this. It was a photocopy machine. Before I worked at Interbrand, I did a little bit of work placement at a company called ID Magazine. And what we did there was we took bits of typography, we put them on the photocopier, we messed around with them, we created a new design style for that magazine. And AI is exactly the same thing. It's just another tool. We had Photoshop, we had Apple Macs, we've now got AI. And the question, I suppose, is it's not should we use AI, but how do we use it without becoming generic? So it's just another interface to use. So it's important to remember that the creative judgment that you have through your aesthetic judgment and your taste and your culture judgment will become more valuable with AI, not less valuable. Click. And don't get scared of all of
Next.
these tools, because they're just tools that we will ultimately use as creatives and integrate them into our design tools that we've used, so that they'll become just as prevalent as Photoshop and InDesign, etc. Click. I can't see everyone, but as a quick poll, I presume most people are using AI in some way, shape, or form for creative work. And I presume there are a few people who are, well, most people will probably be scared of whether there will be fewer creative jobs because of AI. And I think those two that concern about not having a job because of AI is, it's absolutely very valid, because AI will be taking some roles, but other roles will shift to take its place. And usually when new technology comes in or new things come in, like computers or digital typesetting or whatever, both of these things are true. You're excited about the prospect of using a new tool, but there's also a little bit of anxiety about how is that going to affect me? How is that going to affect my job now, in 6 months' time, in 10 years' time? So it's don't worry about being scared about the future. It's up to us to decide what we're going to do with that and how we're going to embrace that. Next slide. Um, I don't think it's rocket science to say that soon AI will become ubiquitous. It will become like electricity, it become like Wi-Fi, it'll be ever present, it'll be cheap. Sometimes now it's quite difficult to get into AI because there's the cost, it's cost prohibitive. You've got to sign up and spend, 50, £100 a month to access some of these AI tools, but that will tumble really quickly and it'll become ever present, becoming cheap. So because of that, that won't be the differentiator. 71% of companies are already using AI. 52% of people are using Chat GPT in the US. And I'd never heard of Chat GPT 2 years ago. And now everyone's on Chat GPT using it. So what we need to think about is the meaning that you build on top of that, your idea, your taste, your cultural awareness. All of those things are your advantage as creative students, because it's not just the access to tools, it's what you do with them and how you use them. Next slide. So just a quick 101 on generative AI. So we'll just keep this really simple. So the basic and best description of this is it's artificial intelligence that creates original content in response to a user's prompt or request. And that request might be typing something into a browser, or might be uploading an image or uploading a style and using that to create original content from something that exists. Click next, please. That's really important because Gen AI works across all of these different areas, from just basic text generation to code to audio to music. And as creatives, our work kind of blends across all of these. And this matters because we access all of these multiple formats. So if I'm designing something for a client, I might use a text generation AI to look at some copy, but then I may be doing a MVP website using code. They might ask us to do a video. We might actually, let's have a look at some audio, some music, and supplement our creative thinking with all of these different areas. So because it's so flexible, it's ultimately an interesting application to use, but it still needs human direction. That's the most important thing. Is it is absolutely brilliant and it can help us in so many different ways, but it's not a silver bullet. Next slide. So how can we use AI as a creative collaborator as a student or an emerging creative? Click next, please. There's 4 different ways of doing this. It can help you research faster. It can help you do mood boards and prototypes. It can help you concept visualization and help with proof writing and proofing. There's so many different subsections of this, but think of it as a support to your thinking, not to replace your thinking. So it's more like a junior assistant, I suppose, with speed, not a creative director making decisions. So what I'd like to do is just go through each of these 4 areas and explain a little bit about what they are, and a couple of examples how you could use them and how I use them at the moment. So can we go to the first one, please? Next slide, yeah. So research acceleration. I use this quite a bit using tools like Perplexity, ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude. And it's probably one of the most useful kind of first case uses for AI. So it can help you in a text-based way to research things like competitors, do competitor audit, look at reference material, look at things like symbolism or audience insights. But the thing to understand is, just because you can get this stuff done fast, it doesn't mean that it is necessarily correct. You still need to cross-check it, look at the sources. So I tend to use it as a kind of first pass for a bit of discovery, then verify and deepen the research. So as an example, on the left-hand side, I use Perplexity Pro probably 10 times a day. I put an example in there. So I've asked Perplexity Pro to do a deep dive on how tartan can become a global symbol of rebellion and heritage in fashion, which is a really quite broad topic. And what it comes back with is 3 or 4 pages of explaining from the machine learning, how that could be interesting to you. So then it's your challenge to go, well, actually, what am I going to do with this information? How am I going to deep dive into that? What's the most interesting part of this that is relevant to the particular thing that I'm researching? So you may ask it extra questions like symbolism and identity, or globalism and rebellion, and try and use it as a kind of sounding board and a way of finding some facts, but don't rely on just those facts. Use your own intuition, use your own research, speak to people interview people if you're doing something on Tart, and find an amazing fashion designer and go and speak to them, and look at the different physical references as well as digital references. So always cross-check your facts. Next slide. Next way is mood boards and prototypes. I use tools like Miro. There's a great new one called Storyboarder, which is a film storyboards. Midjourney have just brought in a new mood board facility, which allows you to create individual mood boards and use those to train outputs from Midjourney. And Lovable is also a fantastic generative AI for coding. So I use it for creating MVPs for websites. You might say create it's a text-based thing, so you talk to it and say create a website for a particular company in this style, give it some style references, and it would iterate those designs for you. But it's up to you to actually use it as kind of a sketching tool. It's useful when you're kind of at the first phase of looking into concepts. So when you're kind of stuck or under pressure, it's really good as a kind of first pass. But the important bit is what kind of happens after that. It's your editing, your choices, your taste, which directions you take these things in are much more important than actually using that tool. So please don't confuse getting something done fast with finished work. It's still you still need to own the taste and direction of where you're going with your particular project. Next slide. This is probably the most used way of using Gen AI in the creative industry is tools like Midjourney, Firefly, Runway, etc. for concept visualization. And this is the stuff that's just really gone crazy over the last kind of 12 months or so. Tools that I used 12 months ago are becoming a little bit more obsolete, and new ones are coming in, like Nano Banana only launched 6 months ago, and that's got all the headlines, whereas Midjourney was prevalent 12 months ago. And all of these are continually kind of developing. And it is really interesting to start using these tools and just experimenting with them. And because you can start looking at different directions and looking at things which you can use to formulate your original ideas. So use them for kind of discussion and iteration. Use them as kind of rough kind of sketches that you want to develop and take further, because ultimately you are in control. You're the person who tells the AI or directs the AI to go in a certain way. So that example on the left-hand side was a prompt that I put in probably 8 months ago, doing a visual for a client, and it's up to me to decide how I want that to work for the concept that I've got. So it's only a small part of the creative process to visualize something using AI. So it's a rough way of doing it, not a final execution. But having said that, go into the next slide. Just for fun, go back. Oh, go back one. Okay, just for fun, you need to decide which of these two images is created using AI. And because you've accidentally gone to the next slide, you probably know which one is done with AI. But basically, the one on the left is an original photograph with obviously a photographer and a model, and the one on the on the right-hand side is Gen AI. And it shows you that it's come on leaps and bounds, even over 6 months. You can see there's an immense amount of detail in photographic and generative AI. But the challenge to get to that type of thing, it's very easy just to say, oh, create me an image of a 40-year-old woman sitting on a sofa. AI will probably come back with something absolutely rubbish. You have to understand how to direct it and how to actually use that tool to get the best result that you want. So if you go to the next slide, please. The prompt at the top there is a really, really detailed prompt, and that's what I wrote into Leonardo AI to get that image there. And you've got to tell it, what camera you think it should be shot on. So I've said full frame, 85mm f2 lens, natural skin texture, visible pores, the how you want the face and the mouth to look. And so there's actually quite a lot of kind of scientific kind of detailing that goes in to get an image that can look quite realistic. And then you can take it one step further. So I think if you click on the image bottom right, the video should play. If you just could do that for 1 second. There should be a video that plays on this slide. Can you click on the bottom right image? Yeah. Yeah. So then I said, take the image and create a, oh, it's not playing yet. It's playing a little bit. Create a 2-second video. So it shows how realistic these things can be when you take it one step further. So next slide. I use this for visuals as well. So I did some work with Hofmeister. So 90% of this work was about the Hofmeister brand and the brand DNA, which is about purity, enjoyment, refreshment. We had a new label design, and to visualize that to the client, I've used Gen AI to give it context. So I've said, first of all, here's an image of the bottle. Put this bottle in a Bavarian alpine stream, lots of fresh water. So I'm giving it the stuff that I'm giving it my taste and my design kind of language. I'm saying it's got to be Bavarian, it's got to have fresh water over it, it's got to be refreshing, tasty, etc. And it creates a static image of that. And then I've taken that into Nano Banana, which is Google Gemini's video tool, and said, create a video out of that, kind of create a 3-second video out of it. So as you can see, it's just a tool that I'm using, just like we would use Photoshop to visualize something on a side of a billboard or something. So it doesn't replace the thinking. It doesn't replace that strategic thinking, which is how should Hofmeister be placed in the beverage market. It's just a way of explaining it in a kind of more interesting way that makes it more relevant to the customer or the client. Next slide. Just another quick example of how I use it really, really quickly. So this was a project I did for a big insurance company. We were designing a new portal for them. They wanted a visualization of how this could work, done really, really quickly within like a couple of days, looking at a journey, some scenarios, a bit of gamification. And we spent most of that day thinking of actually how should all of this fit together, how should we have quizzes in there, what's the gamification, what's the how do people collect the badges and stuff. And then a small amount of that time was visualization of the actual creative concept. So it's not replacing the creative thinking. I've still got a pencil, I've still got a piece of paper, I'm still sketching out what I want. It's just helped me visualize in a slightly better and quicker way to show the client how it can work across a design system and an experience. So it's part of that language, which part of the tools in my toolkit, basically. Next slide. Next one is about proof checking and writing. It's probably one of the most common uses, I think, at the moment. So it's great for if you use Claude or ChatGPT, Grammarly, Perplexity. It's fantastic for doing first drafts of things, for tightening kind of your language, improving your clarity in your CVs, in your statements, in your portfolio copy. You can do that really, really quite quickly. I think the most important thing is just understanding that you need to have your own kind of tone of voice in there as well. And your voice matters. Not only what you say matters, but your kind of tone of voice matters, because I think we've all got emails from people or messages from companies where you go, that is definitely written by AI, because it hasn't got a particular tone of voice. So keep your own tone of voice in it. What I tend to do is I tend to write things longhand. I put it into AI, I get it checked a little bit, I get it the grammar checked, the spelling checked, then I'll write it and rewrite it a few times in my own hand and make sure that at the end it's something that I would say, I would write, I would do, rather than something that AI would do, because I think people can tell that it's an AI that's AI created. So don't lose your own originality, don't lose your own tone of voice. Next slide. So all of that is really good, but there are some big creative risks with using AI. And you probably have heard of some of these, but I'll just go through the top three ones that I find come out. Is first one is the homogenization of voice and style, because AI is trained on all of these different points of data. It can become a bit gray and it can become a bit bland. So it can sometimes bring out those kind of safe things, the safe visuals, the safe adjectives, the same visuals that just occur because all it's looking at is stuff that exists already, and it's spewing those out and giving those back to you. So a really good example was I did a brand a few years ago for a organic brewery, and I could have gone into AI if AI existed at the time and said, create me a label for an organic brewery, make it with hops and wheat and stuff like that, and it would have probably created a half decent label, but it wouldn't have been interesting. It wouldn't have necessarily had a story behind it. It wouldn't have necessarily had something you can capture as a kind of bit of brand DNA. The way I created that brand, it's a company called St. Peter's Brewery, was I went up to where the brewery was. It's in a place in Suffolk in England. I walked around. I was thinking, well, how do I get my inspiration for this? I found a door. On that door, there was a picture which had been there for hundreds of years. I did a rubbing of that picture from the door, and it was a crow with a key in its mouth. And I thought, that's a brilliant idea for the brand. It's got storytelling, it's got humanity, it's existed for a while. You can build a story and a narrative, a brand around that. And that became their brand identity, and it's used on all of the packaging globally. AI could never have done that. That would never happen because it's not using human interaction, it's not using human intuition, it's just creating stuff from stuff that exists at the moment. So just beware of that kind of the grayness of AI. And that leads into the second point, which is gray, and AI often flattens those quirks. As humans, we like a bit of tension. We like a little few things that kind of lodge in your memory when you're looking at things, or whether you're looking at an advert or a piece of identity. A really, really small example of this is the Spotify logo. I don't know whether anyone's ever looked at it closely, but if you look at those three lines on the symbol, they are slightly angled. They're not quite right. They're not perfect. They've got a little bit of quirkiness to it. And I read an article from the designer who did it, and they said, basically, I did it because I wanted to put a bit of humanity in there. If you'd asked AI to design something with three lines coming out from the center, it would have probably done them perfectly, and it probably wouldn't have had that little quirkiness. You might not notice, but it's still there. The other thing that's really important is AI has cultural and emotional blind spots. The image down the bottom right, I said to AI, find me some images of a CEO, and 99.9% of them are white, male, and there's there's nothing that's culturally different about that. So because it's looking at data that exists already, it can misrepresent and exclude entire groups. So just be really careful about that. Next slide. I need to go a little bit quicker, I think. So there's a thing called the creative authorship spectrum, which you can have a look at this later on. But basically, it's about why your creative decisions matter in an AI world. So on the left-hand side, if you've got minimal authorship, so you do one prompt. So I've said, create me a landscape format billboard, make it a bit like Nike. It's quick, but you're not really shaping anything. You're not really having any creative input to that. So it's not really something that you can own and make different in a creative sense. In the middle, there's more stronger authorship where you might use AI, but then you might iterate, you might select, you might redraw, you might hand draw something, combine, change, refine. Most of the usage of AI in design practices in that central area. And then there's the right-hand side, which is becoming less prevalent, but it's still something that's hugely important, is just creating ideas created by hand. And when you use AI for mood boards and just reference, so the image in the bottom there is from a fashion designer. He had a new collection in London. I took a photograph of his sketches and I was talking to him about how his creative process, and he basically said he doesn't use AI, doesn't use any of that. He draws things and that's his thing. He's an artist as well as a fashion designer. So don't forget that skill that you've got there. You can bring some of that into AI, and that's where the most important balance is, using those new tools with your solid kind of craft. So the more you shape, the more you transform, the more you use your original kind of decision-making process, the stronger your creative ownership is. So be more on the right-hand side and in the middle than on the left-hand side. Next slide, please. There's some practical things. Actually, if you click again, all of these will come up. There's some practical habits that we need to get into. Click, please. Just when you're using AI, just make sure that you are transparent about how you're using it. So in your portfolio, state clearly about how you're using it. So you could say like AI used for early research, or AI used for rough visualization, final design done in whatever, but just be clear about it because people need to know. When you're using AI, ask for where its sources are from and then credit those properly in the work that you do. Use original thoughts. So do all of your hard thinking offline on pieces of paper, sketching, and then use AI to kind of polish that and expand it. But don't start with asking AI to think of ideas for you. And then just be careful about ethical sourcing. So this is kind of difficult to know, but some AI tools do exploit artists and communities and scrape work. So just be careful about the tools that you use. And really importantly, don't blindly trust AI. Just check, triple check any facts and make sure that they are things that you can stand by. So next slide. Practical tools you can do today or even tomorrow. If you just click again, please. Be curious. AI is not going to go away. Experiment with the tools. Have a look at the tools on this list. That's probably on this presentation. Sorry, there's probably 1% of the tools available. Log on, get free accounts, experiment with them and learn them. But use them as collaborators, as assistants. So never a substitute for original creative thinking. Protect your originality and your ethics, and see yourself as a creative, but also kind of a conductor. You're embracing these two things, the kind of new tools, the AI systems, but then your kind of human talent and your craft and your craft making. So you've got to put those two things together because AI is not going to go away. You've got to learn how to use it in the future. Next slide. Your two biggest assets are, click again, please, your brain and sketching and your pencil. So your brain is, obviously for judgment, curiosity, critical thinking, and your ability to kind of link abstract ideas, a little bit like that example of St. Peter's Brewery. Do things that AI can't do. So use if you're choosing a bit of music for an advert or a new typeface, you might be walking along the street and see some drain covers or something and go, well, actually, that's a really good idea for a piece of typography. AI can't do that. So kind of use AI, but just kind of pivot away from it as much as you can to allow your kind of taste, your craft, your ability to shape stuff to take you in a different direction, because ultimately you want to make the work yours. You want to make it culturally relevant to you. You want to make it something that AI can't do. So just experiment with AI, but don't rely on it. Next slide. So, yep, that's everything. But I'll just say, just don't be fearful. You don't need to know everything yet, but you do need to stay curious. You need to keep experimenting.